Dessus des vieux volcans, glisse des ailes sous le tapis du vent.
Hello everyone, Daniel Kerr here. So, this is going to be the, I guess, officially part 2 of the recording or processing vocals in the Akai Force, and this is going to be the software portion. Here's the thing, is that I've already recorded a part 2 of part 1, so that's going to be coming out after this, or even maybe before this. Maybe you've already seen it, I don't know. This is going to be just the Ableton Live portion, and then I guess this is going to be a long video because you're going to see the Ableton Live portion first, and you're going to see how I process and set up a random effects machine, and how easy it is to warp vocals. And then I'm going to export those, and then I'm going to load them into the Force, and I'm going to use them in a track, right? The same way we've already done. So that's kind of how it works. Let's get started. Oh, I should say that in part 2 of part 1, in the Force only, the DAW setup, what I did was in the next video, I chopped that vocal into clips and then created a drum program out of it, and I made a huge effects grid. You're really going to enjoy that. If you're into DAW-less recording and performance, then yeah, I would recommend checking that out. Anyway, let's get started in this Ableton Live portion. So here we are in Ableton 11. And the first thing I do is I set my tempo to 123. Turn my metronome on, and then I play the vocal, which is ESTL's cover of Voyage Voyage.
Au-dessus des vieux volcans.
So I loaded up a plugin, Analog, so that I can basically get a reference. I'm experimenting with a different bass line here, just to see how I can change the mood of the track a little bit.
Au-dessus des vieux volcans, glisse des ailes sous le tapis du vent. Voyage, voyage.
What a beautiful vocal.
Éternellement. De nuages en...
So the next thing I do is I go into the vocal and I find the part that I find the part that I want the clip to start with. That's a good spot. Now at this point I have changed the tempo of the overall track to something that is closer to the Voyage Voyage vocal, which is about 100. Now right here I'm going to hit warp from here, right click on the playhead and hit warp from here straight, and that's going to give me one warp marker and try to stretch the track to the tempo, or stretch the track properly according to Ableton Live's warping algorithm. And it actually comes out almost perfect. Now I'm going to go to the drums in Ableton, and I'm just going to load up an 808 kit and basically just lay down a little beat just for reference, right? I'm not building a track here. I'm not trying to write music. So far I've got a bass line and a drum and a vocal, but I'm just using these for reference. Lay down a quick beat. Find a good snare.
Au-dessus des vieux volcans, glisse des ailes sous le tapis du vent.
As you can hear, it's warped perfectly. I go forward in the track, and I zoom in on different areas to make sure that the warp markers or transient markers are in the correct spot.
De vent d'Espagne en pluie d'Équateur. Voyage, voyage, vol dans les hauteurs.
Sounds good.
Au-dessus des capitales, des idées fatales. Regarde l'océan. Voyage, voyage.
I'm going to pitch it down to put it into the correct key, which we've been working at F minor. It goes from G minor to F minor, two semitones down. Notice that I changed the warp marker, or excuse me, the warp algorithm here to complex instead of beats, right? This is going to give us a higher quality stretch for a vocal. Again, just listening with the bass line reference. Okay, I'm going to turn off the beat. I'm going to grab that clip and I'm going to lay it out in the arrangement view in the same track. Turn off the video. And hit that little arrow so that I can hear it. Just listening a little bit more. Making sure that it's warped properly, which it is. This was all unnecessary. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is change the tempo to 123. I know it's warped perfectly. I'm going to turn off the beat. Select the entire track, hit Control R, and I'm going to render this out as voyage, voyage, pitch stretch. Now, do you hear this? That's funny. Because of the screencasting plugin that I have on the master, you can listen to it rendering out. It's very, very strange. Okay, so that's the first thing that I can load into the Akai Force. But what I've decided to do now is add some effects. And I've got an idea here, and it's going to be basically an effects rack that spits out random effects on the audio in random order. I'll show you what I mean. Right now I load up Isotope Trash 2, which is distortion. I'm going to experiment a little bit, find something I like. Pretty interesting. That right there sounds almost like distortion, Skinny Puppy distortion in the early days. Now I'm just browsing presets. That one I like, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. Close down the UI. Then I'm going to select that effect and I'm going to hit Control-G to group it into a rack. Okay? Now I'm going to drag another, I'm going to find another effect. What do I use next? I think Live Cut. Yep, I grab a Live Cut and I pull it down. And I turn off the audio for the first one I made, and now I'm just setting some settings in Live Cut. Set it to Warp Cut. Bring up the straight a little bit. Nice glitch. I'm like, yep, that sounds good. So now I grab another effect. I turn the audio off on that one. Notice we don't want all the effects firing off at once. Grab glitch 2. And I go to modulator. I turn that all the way down. Hit the random in the effects for random settings, and I turn the mix down just a tad. I really don't care for their modulator. I turn the audio off on that. Find another effect. I'm looking for striking effects, but I also want them to be quite different from one another. I'm going to throw a vocoder on there. Trying the different carriers. Okay, in the vocoder here, I'm going to change it to one of their presets, Format +5, which does sound pretty interesting. I've always liked it. I'm going to mess with the formants here. Pretty interesting. Now I'm going to go to Max for Live. I'm going to drag an LFO into that same rack with the vocoder. And I'm going to I'm going to bring down the rate of the LFO and I'm going to map it to the format. Listen. And just slow that down some more. Now, I also think that the super high format levels and the super low format levels are unnecessary. So I end up turning down the depth of the LFO so it doesn't swing so far and wide, to and fro. Listening, I turn up the unvoiced and the sensitivity. I'm listening. See how high that is? Lots of sibilance. Unnecessary. So I turn down the depth of the LFO. Now I think that's beautiful. So I turn off the audio on that one, and I find yet another effect. And I think that I go to Melba plugins maybe next. Yep. And I go into their filters, and I grab a comb filter, and I drag it down. And I just let it play, and I just keep hitting the random button. Till I find something weird. That's nice. It's like very heavily in the right channel. I turn that off, grab another effect. Next I go into Live's audio effects, and in reverb and resonance I grab a spectral resonator. Now in the spectral resonator, as you can see there where the frequency is, I change it from hertz to note, and that'll let me dial in the exact note that I want, which is F, right? Because that's what the track is in. So I go up, up, up to F. And it sounds great, and I want to keep it. So what I do is I double it, and the second version of the spectral resonator, I go down 1 octave. Right? So now I've got 7 effects on there. I turn them all back on. And then, you know what? I want some reverb. So I go back to my plugins. And I go down to grab Valhalla Supermassive, and I pull it down. Since I've already turned audio up on all these, I just solo this one. And I choose a preset that I like, which is Splashy Synth. Turn the mix down a little, and then I get another idea. I open up the modulation matrix for Valhalla. I find the mix slider there. So then I go back to Max for Live and I grab another one of those LFO tools and I bring it down to that channel strip with the Valhalla in it, and I changed the waveform. If you've noticed, I changed it from sine to random, or sample and hold really, and then I turn it to sync and I bring it up to where every 1 bar, well, it looks like every 1/8 note. There we go. I've mapped it to the mix there. Okay, now these sound great to me. I put a limiter on the end just to tame any stray volume changes. Now here I go to the audio effect rack and I click on one of the audio effects I put in there, and then I hit Control-A to select them all. And then in this field, I opened up the chain there. See the chain at the top where it says chain? And then I grab this field and I stretch these guys all the way out. Then I right click and choose distribute ranges equally, right? So now as it's playing, I can bounce around with that. But what I do is I grab yet another LFO and I put it down here and I change it to sample and hold or random, and I change it to sync and 1 bar, and then I map it to that chain selector at the top. Put the cursor in the middle, map, and chain select. Okay, now listen. Amazing. It's going to sound different every time. Okay, so I select that entire clip, and I actually select even a little more, right? You'll see, watch. Holding shift down, I select more, and I'm going to render all that into an audio file, okay? Which is shift control R. And I'm going to put it in the same folder, and I'm going to call this Voyage Effects 1. Okay, so at the end I decide, since each render is going to be different, that I'm going to go ahead and render it again. That way I'll get 2 copies of this effects clip, but it's going to be, each one is going to be slightly different. This time I call it Effects 2. And it's rendering. Okay, so that's done. Next thing I want to do is I want to reverse it. It's telling me it's not going to be a video anymore. No problem. So I'm going to leave it in reverse. Select an area that's bigger than the clip like I did last time. Holding shift, then shift control R, and I'm going to render another copy but with all of the audio in reverse, and it's going to be called Reverse Effects or Rev Effects. And it's rendering. Done. Now I go to the file and I test these out to make sure that they sound right. Regular one, stretched and pitched. This is why software is so much easier for this. Doing this in the Force, we'll listen to that. And these guys are ready to go into the Force. I can even chop them up and put them in a drum channel if I want to. I probably will. Dang. Let's try the reverse. Oh, man. That has a myriad of applications. Okay, so back to the channel, back to the track. I'm going to make 2 copies of Valhalla Supermassive. Just add another one. And I'm going to re-stretch all the parts out. And I'm going to right-click again and distribute ranges equally. And now I'm going to go into each one of the effects that I have on here. I'm going to change the parameters a little bit. Just grabbing some random presets in this Valhalla. It's in reverse still. Change the comb filter. Gonna make another one. Random effects, no distortion effects. I removed the isotope trash. Double click. Reverse it back to normal, back to unreverse it. Select a large area, Shift Control R. Effects. No D, no distortion. Rendering again. Now I select the audio and remove it. And I put the beat in the arrangement view because I like that simple beat enough that I decide I'm going to record it. I'm going to render it out. Add a limiter, give it some boost. Select it, Shift Control R. Call it an 808 break. Next, I'm going to freeze it and then flatten it so that it's audio. And then I'm going to drag it down to our effects chain. And I'm going to stretch it out. 16 bars. Yep. And then I'm going to turn loop on so that it's repeated. And now I'm going to render it. 808 break. Effects. Hit random a few times on the comb filter. Change the decay amount on one of the spectral resonators and turn down dry wet signal. Go to the other spectral resonator and mess with the stretch and turn down the dry wet signal. Go to Valhalla Supermassive and change the preset. Go to the next Valhalla and change the preset. I don't even know how most of this is going to sound. Go to the vocoder and change it to noise as a carrier. Oh, no, pitch tracking. Go to live cut. And delete it. Now I'm going to grab them all because now there's a blank spot, but if I pull these over, now some of these are going to overlap. There's always going to be two. Well, in most places, in this, I'm going to change the random on the glitch. If you look at the field now, some of these are overlapping. So if it, like where it's at now, it's going to hear two effects at once. So yeah, I don't even know how most of this is going to sound. Beautiful. Render 808 break effects 2. Last thing I do is consolidate all of this and reverse it. Select a big portion. The reason why I select a portion is in case there's a reverb tail at the end. .808 break rev effects. All right, so that wraps up the Ableton portion. The next thing I'm going to be doing is loading these clips into the Force, and I'm going to be using it in a track, right? So there are essentially, even after this, altogether there are going to be 4 or even 5 vocal processing in the Akai Force or for the Akai Force videos in this series. Anyway, go to ghostwrittenclips.com. You can sign up for the email list and you can get free stuff. I don't send emails out very often. You won't get spammed. Number 2, go to the link in the description and you can get the entire melodic techno or prog house, tech house toolkit that I created for Akai Force. And anybody who purchased that already will get these updated files and project files, patterns, new samples, everything. Oh, anyone can always hit me up at snowmetaluniversity@gmail.com and you can talk to me about anything. Doesn't matter what it is. Hit me up anytime for any reason. Be blessed.
Au-dessus des vieux volcans, glisse des ailes sous le tapis du vent. Voyage, voyage, éternellement. De nuages en marée